Welcome to Reading the Bible with Pastor. Today we're on Esther chapter 9. We're finishing up the book of Esther, and previously we had read about how Esther saves the Jews, her people, and Mordecai writes an edict saying that they are now the ones to destroy their enemies on the very same day and same month that Haman's edict said that all of the enemies of the Jews could attack those people, the Jews. Chapter 9, verse 1. Now in the 12th month, on which is the month of Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's command and edict were about to be carried out, on the very day when the enemies of the Jews hoped to gain mastery over them, the reverse occurred. The Jews gained mastery over those who hated them. The Jews gathered in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus to lay hands on those who sought their harm. And no one could stand against them, for the fear of them had fallen on all the peoples. This kind of reminds us of the time of Joshua and the judges, that no matter what, when God was in favor with the Israelites, when he found them to be his people, no matter what army came before them, the army was destroyed. The Israelites always were victorious. Think about when Gideon led the people, the army of 300 men, against a vast army and destroyed them. No matter what, God's people were going to triumph. And so the people in the citadel and in all the provinces found that the Jews were going to win this fight. They were going to destroy their enemy. God's hand is in all of this. He was making sure that Mordecai heard these things, that Queen Esther, of all the women in the kingdom, became queen to the king, and that King Ahasuerus would find that Haman was wicked and would restore the Jews by granting Mordecai to be second in command, and that his people would be saved. Let's continue with verse 3. All of the officials of the provinces and the satraps and the governors and the royal agents also helped the Jews, for the fear of Mordecai had fallen on them. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces. For the man Mordecai grew more and more powerful. The Jews struck all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, as did as they pleased to those who hated them. In Susa, the citadel itself, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men, and also killed Parshandatha, and Deophon, and Aspatha, and Poratha, and Adalia, and Aridatha, and Parmashta, and Irisai, and Iridai, and Vaisatha, the 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews. But they laid no hand on the plunder. Now that's interesting. They were allowed to, by the edict, to grab everything that belonged to these people that they killed. Well, why they didn't take this plunder might go all the way back to 1 Samuel chapter 15, where we had learned that Haman, the son of Hammedatha, is an Agagite, which is also from the tribe of the Amalekites. The Amalekites were supposed to be destroyed back in chapter 15 of 1 Samuel, but Saul didn't. He refused the order of the Lord. So let's review that here, 1 Samuel chapter 15. And Samuel said to Saul, "The Lord sent me to anoint you king over his people of Israel. Now therefore listen to the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I have noted what Amalek, that is, he is the king of the people of the Amalekites, did to Israel in opposing them on the way when they came up out of Egypt. Now go and strike Amalek, and devote to destruction all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey." Saul was supposed to destroy everything, but he, in his own foolish wisdom, decided to take of the plunder of Amalek, the people Amalekites, the same people that Haman is descended from. So in order to fulfill what was in 1 Samuel chapter 15, the people don't take the plunder from the family of Haman, the Agagite, from the tribe of Amalekites. Verse 11. That very day, the number of those killed in Susa, the citadel, were reported to the king. And the king said to Queen Esther, "In Susa, the citadel, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men, and also the 10 sons of Haman." What then have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is your wish? It shall be granted. And what further is your request? It shall be fulfilled. And Esther said, If it please the king, let the Jews who are in Susa be allowed tomorrow also to do according to this day's edict, and let the 10 sons of Haman be hanged on the gallows. Again, that's that wooden spike. So the king commanded this to be done. A decree was issued in Susa, and the 10 sons of Haman were hanged. The Jews who were in Susa gathered also on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and they killed 300 men in Susa, but they laid no hands on the plunder. Now the rest of the Jews who were in the king's provinces also gathered to defend their lives, and got relief from their enemies, and killed 75,000 of those who hated them, but they laid no hands on the plunder. This was on the 13th day of the month of Adar. On the 14th day they rested, and made that day of feasting and of gladness. But the Jews who were in Susa gathered on the 13th day, and on the 14th day, and rested on the 15th day, making that a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews of the villages who live in the rural towns hold the 14th day of the month of Adar as a day for gladness and feasting, as a holiday, and as a day on which they send gifts of food to one another. So the Jews have victory because of God's hand in all of this. God's name hasn't been mentioned, but his will was done to save his people because they have faith in him. Again, we see how God works in our lives afterwards, as we see it must have been God's providence to make sure that we were safe or were healed or whatnot. Esther is a reminder that God is working in our lives, whether we hear him, see him, we beg to him. He is at work because he is our God and he loves us. We'll continue on here and finish up the book of Esther, starting with chapter 9, verse 20.